Hi, welcome to this episode of Cleartone Podcast. My name is David Rodriguez, and today's special guest is none other than Branden Herron. Branden, thank you for being with us today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. Branden, wanted to get started and ask you, how did you get your start in music? When did you start taking music lessons, or when did you start becoming involved with music?
I started in music back in fifth grade, and I started on trumpet. And I had this crazy, outlandish idea that I was going to be able, at one point in my life, wake up before my father and play Reveille just to piss him off. And that never happened because I still, to this day, cannot wake up ahead of him. But I started in fifth grade on trumpet. I think I took my first private lesson on trumpet probably about a month into school, because I wasn't that great. I had a band director who looked at me and said, you should probably be playing trombone, just upon looking at my face. And I said, no, I want to annoy my dad. And man, was he glad I stuck to trumpet, because sixth grade, we went from 20 trumpets to I'm the only trumpet player this year. And I moved into tuba when I got to junior high, when I outgrew the band director. And I always played tuba and trumpet throughout junior high and high school. I was section leader in the tuba section. I was usually second trumpet in jazz band. And yeah, but I actually never took a tuba lesson until my first semester of being a music major in college, which was my third year. But we'll get to
Okay.
that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So fifth grade is when you started playing
Yeah.
the trumpet, and then you said you were involved both in the concert band and in the jazz groups. Any other groups? Just those two while you were in high school?
Um, Pretty much almost everything. I was in jazz band. I was in the marching band. I was drum major. I was in the indoor drum line, and I played cymbals in that group. I was pretty much everywhere in the music program.
Right, great, great, great. And then you took private lessons consistently after fifth grade, or a little after you started trumpet in fifth grade.
I think I took lessons for probably 6 months.
Okay,
Um, and then didn't really get back into taking lessons for trumpet until probably early high school, because I was throughout junior high, I was constantly switching instruments wherever the band director needed more bodies at, because he just, when you go into junior high, you've got 30 trumpets, no French horn players, one tuba player who's on their way out, and just you have to start rearranging people.
right, right. So for you obviously had a joy for music. When did you decide that, hey, maybe this could be a career for me? When was that for you?
Um, Probably, to honestly think of it as a career, was my sophomore year of college.
Okay,
That's when I started looking at it more as a career instead of just a hobby. But
okay.
it's
No,
an
yeah.
odd answer probably for somebody who is trying to consider themselves a professional musician. But yeah, a little late bloomer if you, in that regards.
No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's great. And then so for you, you went after high school. You were going and you were studying, or what was it that you planned on studying while you were in college?
Chemical engineering.
Okay.
That was my first idea of what I wanted to do. And I went to Cal Poly Pomona,
Okay.
and I went there because of their incredible engineering program. It's also right down the street from where I grew up, being a Southern California kid. So I went there. Took a year of chemical engineering courses, and they were just not a lot of fun to me.
Okay.
I mean, I can understand, like, some of it was really cool, but other aspects of it were just mind numbing, to the point where if I couldn't submit myself to doing that on a daily basis. But I saw that, and the science aspect of it still really intrigued me. And I looked into the chemistry major, and I looked that direction because I had a chemistry teacher who was just absolutely fantastic. He was extremely intelligent and really loved to get people involved, and he really got me engaged into it. And then I ran into physics. I still don't understand physics. Like,
That's mind blowing. Yeah.
yeah, but there's a friction when it hits the ground that's in the opposite direction of what way it moves, and you have to equate for it. I gave up. I gave up. And at that point, I was sitting at myself going, I can't drop out of college. But what am I doing here that makes me happy? Well, it's Wednesday and I'm on campus because there's concert band. Can I do concert band as a job? And so when I asked that to the tuba instructor, or the concert band director who ended up being the tuba instructor at the school, he's like, yeah, why did it take you 2 years to ask me this? And that's kind of how I became a music major. That's the start of it.
Okay. So
Dr.
you were
Anthony Mazzaferro.
so you were participating in you were in the concert band at Cal Poly Pomona while you were studying another
Oh, yeah.
field.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's super important to highlight because, you know, at least as a band teacher, I always tell my kids, like, you know, you don't have to go to college to be a musician, but if you have that skill, you can take that skill with you to help with scholarships or some type of financial aid, right? It's a talent, it's a skill that you have,
Yeah.
that you can, you know, you can share that skill with their music program there that would help you pay for your schooling to study whatever it is you want to study. You don't have to study music, you know, you don't have to participate in their music programs and have to have a career in music.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's really cool that, you know, you were involved with the music program despite studying in a different area. I know to us that just seems, that's not a foreign concept, or it doesn't seem weird, but to a younger student, it's like, oh, I don't get that. I don't want to have a career in music. Well, you don't have to, but you can still get that scholarship and get that money to help you.
Yeah. And at a school like Cal Poly, it's very different than APU. It's not a conservatory. It has a really small music school. And where you would ask the students at a conservatory, how many people are not music majors? And you get like 5, 10 to stand up. And you would actually get that kind of result if you asked Cal Poly's wind ensemble when I was there, how many of you guys are music majors? About 5 of us would stand up.
Right. Yeah.
And the biggest reason was the music groups could only meet during one time scheduled. They got priority registration.
Okay. So that's another bonus.
Yeah, it's
that's
the biggest bonus you can ever ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge bonus because then all you get first ups at all those classes that get filled up, you know, real quickly. So, you know, I try to tell my kids that it's like, hey, you know, you study music, stay involved so that when you go to college, you have that opportunity, you have that skill that you can then carry on, and it might help pay for, you know, some of that tuition, or you might go to a Cal Poly Pomona where you can get that priority registration going on.
Yeah.
All
And
good stuff.
it's a great outlet, man. It is the best outlet. Not playing for more than a day or two makes me shudder now.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your experience. You said you studied with Mr. Tony Mazzaferro, who's phenomenal music educator in this area, conducts so many groups, taught so many different places, you know, a great mind in the music education field. Pleasure of meeting him on one occasion. He came to clinic, or he came as part of a clinic for our band festival at my school one year. So what was that experience like, studying tuba with him? And then, you know, this was your junior year that you made that decision?
Yeah.
And so, you know, after that junior year and on, that experience.
So after that, so I started with him that year, and I studied with him for 4 years at Cal Poly. And to say he kicked my butt is probably the least understated thing anybody can ever say. I mean, I would not be where I am without him, and his instilling there's a level of consistency that he asked for that he always wanted, and I didn't ever want to disappoint him. I remember one of our first lessons. I don't know if he honestly did this as a joke or not, and he still hasn't told me if it's a joke, but he looks at me and he goes, just remember, I drive all the way up here for you. Let's go. was the only tuba student in the school. And he was like, I drive up here for your lesson. That's it. And then I drive home. Better make us good.
Yeah, you better make this worth my time.
Yeah. So ever since after that, I was like, no, everything's going to be as good as I can. I know I disappointed him a few times, and I deserve those, but it was a great time. He's so so intelligent. The way he thinks about music is eye opening. It's he's experienced and learned so much more than I'll probably get, and I always come away from a conversation with him learning something new, and it's just amazing. After started with him in 2010, 10 years. I've known him for 10 years, and I can still say I learned something new from him every single day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, just the time I spent with him, that one 8-hour day,
Yeah.
there was just so much information that he provided, and the kids loved him. They were like, it was just what he brought to the table, his experience, how he can explain something to another person, like he's a tuba player, but he was able to explain concepts to the flutes, and it made it seem like he was a flute player.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whoa, this guy was on another planet when it came to, musical knowledge,
Yeah.
compared to me at that time. So that's great. Is there what was that? I guess some of your other experiences musically, like when you finally decided that you were going to make that transition, what was your attitude now towards the tuba?
My attitude to the tuba, and I was trying to. This ties into one of the things you asked me in an email, but like, what was a funny story about my undergrad experience? Because this ties in perfectly. The first time I performed with the tuba, as far as, all right, this is what I consider a soloistic piece. Here's an etude out of the Bordoni book. And when I finished playing, it was just for one of the like performance forum classes. So there's about 15 music majors and a teacher, and we're just playing for each other, and you get feedback. And I remember I finished up playing going, well, I don't know if that was good or bad, but we'll see. And the teacher said, I didn't know a tuba could do that. And I still don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm still trying to think about that. I don't actually know. I always thought it was a joke that maybe I just like surprised him. But sometimes I still think like, was he insulting me? Did I play really bad? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just try to at this point, I just try to do things and play in ways that people honestly go, I've I've never heard a tuba do that, or I've never heard that type of like cleanliness in a passage from a tuba player, or I haven't heard something that solid, that low, or that sustained. And to be able to do both things and do it in quick succession is a hard thing to do, and that's what I try to go for. But I just try to make people go, huh. So the tuba is not just an oompa thing,
Right.
even though that's usually how I make most of my living. But
Right.
oompa,
Yeah.
oompa.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Is there any from that experience? Was there anything, any highlight, any musical highlight, like a performance that happened and you were like, man, that was one of the best performances we gave of this work, or a solo that you did, recital?
In undergrad, not too much,
Okay.
and that's not for a lot of different reasons. That's just in my own opinion, I know I wasn't going as hard as I should have in
Okay.
undergrad. I know that I didn't. I had at that point coming out of undergrad, I thought I was a lot better than I actually was, and I thought I had the playing ability of somebody who it's more like what I have now. But It's nowhere close to that.
Okay, and that's what I was going to ask you next. What was, looking back at that experience as from your undergrad, what was something that you might have done differently?
Branched out more.
Okay.
I was too consumed with just working on getting better and not not reaching out into the community, because I didn't have much knowledge of the area around me as far as different honor groups or um, different performance opportunities in high school. Like I didn't know of any of the summer programs until I was out of undergrad. In some cases, like Cazadero, didn't even know it existed until I was almost out of my undergrad program. Just didn't even know. So I I should have looked around at the other schools and not like try to compete with that kind of idea, but just like APU has this amazing opportunity at with John, that he does this weekly masterclass that is open to everybody when we're in session, obviously, and anybody can come, and it's just 2 to 3 hours of a bunch of tuba players playing together, and it's not necessarily a way to measure yourself against other people, but it's a way to just show that you can always find something to work on. There's people that are always going to be better at you, and sometimes you'll be better than them some weeks, and vice versa. And the more you do, the more you get. And I just wasn't doing enough outside, so I was really strong in what I could do in the area that I was in, but completely unexperienced outside.
Right. And I would say something simple. I was in that similar boat. Like I didn't realize a whole lot of those summer programs, during my undergrad years. Even before that, so there were people that were going out and doing camps or doing all these different sessions. I was like, that was all foreign to me until on my way out. And I asked my private instructor, and I said, hey, how come you never recommended me to go to one of these events? Or, hey, you never shared this with me. Um, and that was a funny story. He goes, no, I thought it was like, oh, I didn't think you thought I was very good. That's why you never recommended me. And all my trumpet player friends would talk about this experience. I don't know if you're aware of it, of the Humboldt State, that brass workshop that they do. There's a brass workshop out in Humboldt State, and it's 2 weeks. And my private instructor, he's one of the coaches there. And so all the other trumpet players in our, in the section at the time would talk about it. Like, oh yeah, I went. Oh yeah, he told me that I should go. And I was like, he never mentioned that to me. Maybe he didn't think I was very good. And then, I finally had the courage at the end, and I said, hey, I'm meaning to ask you, this is something that, was bothering me. I want to get off my chest, but you never recommended that I should go to this thing. And he's like, I didn't. And I said, no. And he's like, oh yeah, you should go. So I was like, oh, this entire time I thought it was like, you had to be pretty good. Like it was by invitation only.
Yeah.
But, all I have to say is, I didn't know a whole lot about other, programs or summer camps like Ottawa or some of the things that happen until afterwards. And now I've aged out. So,
Yeah.
so you
Same.
can't go,
Yeah.
but it would, that's cool. That would be something I would have liked to have done, growing up. But wanted to move on and ask you, how did, you talked a little bit about your attitude and the experience in undergrad. What were some things that helped prepare you for graduate school? Like, what were some things that you had to say, all right, you know what, I got to really amp it up, and, graduate school is going to be way different than undergraduate studies?
Yeah. So, my my audition. So I auditioned at Juilliard in my junior year of undergrad, and a mixed circumstance of my not being that great of a tuba player at the time versus the biggest coincidence of my life. But I had the worst audition ever. I sat down after working with the pianist that they supply for you when you audition at Juilliard. I had worked with her on the Hindemith Sonata for tuba,
Okay.
and you're familiar with Hindemith, and the sonatas are awful for the piano players. And I apologize to any piano player who's ever had to learn the tuba sonata. It is a nightmare, and
It's
it
bonkers.
starts very, very massive, and it's not a tonal piece. It doesn't lead you anywhere unless you spend a long time studying it. And I hadn't. But I noticed after the first note I played, my pianist played 3 straight wrong notes. And then I hit a wrong note, 3 more wrong notes to another wrong note. And at that point, my confidence was shattered on probably the strongest piece I had. And after the piano portion was done, she left. I had to do some etudes and some excerpts. And before I started that, Alan Bear, New York Phil's tuba player, looks at me and goes, "I'm so sorry that just happened." I was like, well, that's not a good sign. That woke me up. And I was like, okay, I have to be so much better about this, where I am so locked into what I'm doing that even if the piano does something wrong or somebody else does something wrong, I know I can still trust myself.
Right. No, that's super important. That's super important. That confidence, and then there's a whole nother topic of performance anxiety and how to cope with that and things like that. Did you ever like do any of that stuff, like take beta blockers or any of that stuff? Do you have performance anxiety?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't even enjoy public speaking very much. Enough where sometimes even like this situation will make me a little shaky, which is a good thing. It reminds me that, okay, I'm still alive. I'm still doing something right. But I've never done beta blockers. The only thing that I've actively done is attempt to never start a recital. I I've played five recitals, five, something like that, 4 or 5, and I've played the first note of the recital one time, and that was the master's one. Both my artist certificates and my undergrad, I did not start the recital. I knew that I would be afraid enough to chip the first note. I knew that I would do it, and I just never could trust myself. And I told myself, nope. When I get into my master's, this has to be different. I have to make sure I'm going out of the box. I'm out of the comfort zone. I'm starting angry, and I did. But that was the only thing I did. Was like, if I can make sure that something else plays that is confident, I can go with that really well. That's the only thing I did. I just didn't like being the one who's like, all right, if I have to start, especially if it was in a range that can be iffy for me, I'm like, it's not where I want to be.
Right. Yeah.
And that just
Yeah.
amplifies a little.
Yeah. Like I wasn't aware of I think we all get, even people who now are more comfortable playing still get, a little bit apprehensive. I know I really was when I first started, because it was one of the I had played in a kind of public setting, in church, and they would prance me around and say, okay, play something. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
you're kind of playing a little bit in front of people, and the concert's a little bit different because we're in the back. We're
Oh
sitting
yeah.
in the back, so it's like you're not going to see the audience. You're not going to see their reactions if we played a wrong note, or we missed that entrance or whatever. And then little by little, I built that confidence. But I know people in my undergrad that did take beta blockers, and that was like the first time I'd ever heard of that. Like I just figured, you just kind of you learn to deal with it.
I will be honest. When you said beta blockers, that's the first time I'd heard beta blockers in this respect.
Okay.
So I was like, what? No, definitely didn't do beta blockers.
Yeah, I guess it's some type of substance that you can take, if my understanding is correct, where it kind of numbs you a little bit in some ways, where it kind of blocks certain receptors from feeling anxiety.
Okay.
So I know a couple of folks that would take something to that effect. I may be butchering the name, but that's how I remember. I know some folks, like they have a whole ritual, like they'll do breathing or some type of yoga, or they'll eat a banana before, or a couple of different things.
Yeah.
So I was curious. So,
I've messed with those here and there, but nothing really seems to settle for me.
right.
Um, depends on the situation. There is one that I do, but that's time and a place. But I'll get
Right.
to that one later. I do want to tell some fun stories about that.
Okay, great. So you know, working on your master's degree, what was that kind of intensity like? You know, were you having to double the amount of practicing you were doing? You know, what was the experience of studying with John rather than Tony? And for everybody, John Van Houten.
Yeah,
Yeah.
John Van Houten. Man, so what I'll say is I went from undergrad. I took a year off unintentionally, um, and just tried to practice as much as I could. I joined a brass band, and um, after that, I started actively. I need to get back into this. One more shot at a master's, and I opened up a little bit and tried to expand outside. I had never honestly thought of APU as a location that I was going to go to until um, John Burdett. He sent me an email. He was like, "Hey, I heard you're looking at masters again," because he was in my undergrad. He started there when I was my second to last year,
Okay.
and yeah, and he ended up leaving right before I graduated, and after I graduated, ended up at APU, and he kind of recruited me into looking at APU. Um, and I played for John, and I did an audition, and I wasn't ready for a master's program. They knew that, but John heard something in me. He said that there was something in my sound. He could hear my work ethic, and he said, "Look, it's a little non-traditional. Let's have him go through the artist certificate program first, which usually you do after a master's." And he said, it's going to be in a practice of intensive program for him. And you're going to see in 2 years, he's going to be more than master's ready. And I think that I was able to prove it enough to them because I was able to get a scholarship after it. And I would have never been able to do the master's program without John and John.
Yeah, John and John. And that's great. Yeah, yeah. Um, what would be some advice you could give to somebody who was wanting to study tuba? They were looking to do an undergrad in tuba performance. What are some words of encouragement you could give to somebody?
It's never too late. Just if you want to, do it. It's possible. It's as long as you're having fun, that's really all that matters. And you know, the worst day on tuba is still the best day. Let's see, what was the worst thing I ever did as a job? Worst day putting labels on a bag of dog food.
Okay.
So, you know, there's nothing I could, there was never going to be something, putting a sticker on a bag of dog food that was going to make me think, yeah, today was better than, sucking at tuba. No, I'd rather suck at tuba than have to go do that. I, it's once you start doing it, just embrace everything about it. Enjoy the tone, enjoy being the backbone. As a tuba player, the hardest thing that you will have to overcome is telling yourself you are worth it. And a lot of times it stems from tuba players not hearing that ever. We don't get complimented very often. And that's kind of the nature of the beast because you don't do much other than bass lines. But you screw up and everybody tells you because it's obvious when we mess up. So it becomes one of those, you have to get past the negative. You are still really good, even though nobody is actively telling you this. And that's something I actively do when I teach is I try to be very, very positive and like reminding my students what they're doing right, because it's really easy to find the negatives, especially in our own playing.
Right. And I was going to ask you a couple of questions about, your thoughts on tuba for younger students, seventh, eighth grade students playing that instrument, and what band directors can do to assist in them being more successful if they chose to make a career out of tuba performance or music education. So
Yeah.
that kind of tails right into that. So what are some of your thoughts on that? What are some good ways if you were going to start a student on tuba thinking seventh, eighth grade?
Um, easy, man, starting on some of the etude books early on, and you get them playing them as if they're songs, and trying to convince them that, look, you are not a tuba player, you're just a really low baritone. You are, think of yourself more as a singer, not a tuba player. You want to sing through all this. Your instrument naturally wants to resonate. This instrument is not going to be maintained very well inside of a room. If I start playing in this room, it's going to be heard all throughout the house and probably next door, because I don't have proper soundproofing. We have that power. And yeah, it's, sorry, I lost myself there.
No, you were talking, yeah, singing through the instrument.
Yeah, it actively trying to sing with the instrument allows the instrument to resonate, and that's where the instrument succeeds the most. And when you've got, everybody has heard when the tuba section's a little too narrow, and it sounds like they're there but blurry, and it just needs to line up, and it's that little bit of focus that we have to look for.
Okay.
And singing and reminding yourself that this is not just an exercise. This is not just an exercise. We are singing. I don't care that we're playing a scale. We're singing through a scale. Everything we do has a purpose. We will always be locked in. And as a bass player, as a bass voice, we have to be locked in.
Right. No, that's super important. That's super, because like you said, you can tell when you're not locked in, you know, that's the first thing people notice. And hey, you weren't locked in.
That is actually what John says the most, is like, if I can hear when people stop playing Bordonis, you lose the singing sound in your playing really quickly, because a lot of what we do is just not that style. So we just have to remember to stay in it, to keep that sound and that quality when we're not singing in that style. The Ride of the Valkyries can still sound even better if you sing your way through it instead of just actively attack it like you normally should.
Right. Right. Now, is there a good, I guess, resource book, etude book of I guess quality for younger students who are just starting out?
Yeah. The Arbans is always a good book.
Okay.
It's a lot. It's so much material, and it's so jam-packed, and it's, in my opinion, not really well explained at any point in the book. And Dr. Mazzaferro explained it pretty well to me, and I've since forgot it. And I've been working my way back through, like, how would I try to teach out of this book? The Giuseppe Concone etude studies is very, very good, because it's for that was my first etude book when I switched to tuba, or when I became a tuba major, and I started playing B flat tuba for that book, and then had to start relearning that book on C tuba. But the best one to go for is the Bordoni studies. Yeah, they have a tuba version where it's all three of the Bordoni books in one spiral bound, and you will use it for the rest of your life. It's the best book to ever get.
Okay, great. Now, what would you say is a good, I guess, mouthpiece to introduce the tuba? Like for trumpet players, everyone says, Bach 7C. Is there something similar to that for the tuba?
Yes and no. So there's one that's pretty much standard that comes with every tuba that gets made, and it's a 24AW or something along those lines, and it's a tuba mouthpiece, but that's pretty much all it does. It works. But I never got off of that particular mouthpiece until I knew better in college. My first mouthpiece was a Schilke 69C4, and that was I was told to get that one from Doc, and I still have it. It's still one of my favorite mouthpieces. It's not my regular, but it's one of the first go-to ones that I pull out for a student who's trying to see, like, all right, what do I want to go to? It's probably one of the most versatile, like, C tuba or B flat tuba mouthpieces. It will allow you to go into the upper range, but not like hinder your low range as well.
Sure, sure. Cool. Now, are there any, I guess, solo repertoire things for young tuba players that they can do that a band director can assign to them to help them, in their tuba
Yeah,
playing?
yeah. The Vaughan Williams folk songs, the six suites or six folk songs. Yeah, the six folk songs. There's a couple of different arrangements of them that I've actually seen for tuba. Some of them that are all in a comfortable octave, and some where they're like kind of spread up a little bit. But all of those things can be adjusted to fit your octave as well. Um, I did my very first solo work was Concertino Basso by Richard Lieb, Lieb, and it was actually a bass trombone solo. So another easy one, or not easy, great range and great learning tool is J.E. Barat's Introduction in Dance, and there's a version for baritone and tuba. So it was a really, really good piece to learn.
Yeah, great, great. Now, kind of moving forward, um, your current work right now is you are part of the Eastman team. Can you talk a little bit about that? What your experience there is, and what you do, and what are some of the things, some of the
Yeah.
inside?
So Eastman technically, for lack of better terms, is my day job, even though it is amazing. I do a lot of still active playing. Eastman, currently I am the wind shop lead technician. And what that entitles is I'm basically running our winds shop department, which has 2 woodwind techs and including myself, 3 brass techs, and we are still quality controlling 100% of instruments that come in from China. And um, we are actually myself and one of the other techs split time working for Shire's custom brass company, and we are quality controlling and working on their Q series euphoniums and trombones here.
Okay,
Um,
great.
yeah, so my daily roles, and basically I'm running that shop. I am um, overseeing the parts department, and yeah, and working on instruments. And that's basically all I do there. It's
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
yeah. I can imagine being an instrumentalist. It's like that's the perfect gig.
Yeah,
You get to be there. You get to work
I'm
with instruments.
I'm underneath the hood of my own instrument, and that was one of the coolest things. Was I when I started at Eastman, they had just come out with their 632 tuba, which is their first C tuba.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna lie, when that thing came out, I wouldn't play it. It was not very good. And within probably 6 months of me saying it's getting better, it was actually getting better, and it has gotten ridiculous. The tubas are amazing now. It's nice to see that the company is actively always looking to get better.
All right. And so, how did you get your start there?
I got my start there because one of the guys who I went to undergrad with started posting flyers that the company needed warehouse workers. And
Okay.
the first thing he thought of was, well, I'm going to go to the college that I go to and see if I can wrangle any of my friends. And so I contacted them, and I still remember my first interview with them. I walked in to meet with their manager, and he was wearing an Eastman t-shirt and bright green pants, shorts. And the first thing he asked me is, so I see you're a tuba player. Have you ever played Dixieland jazz? I'm like, yeah, I actually just did a Dixieland jazz group with a buddy of mine for his recital. He goes, so I have this band and I need a tuba player. I was like, I thought I was here about Eastman. So that was a day I ended up getting 2 jobs, but I ended up starting there as a warehouse employee that I was picking instruments, I was unloading trucks, and I was moving boxes. And I worked up from there, and they asked like, hey, would you be interested in learning of the QC process and working in the shop? And I jumped on it. and have taken every single opportunity. I'm part of the National Association of Band Instrument Repair Technicians now, and I'm learning so much about build quality and repair work, and it's something I never thought I would have enjoyed so much.
Right. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Very cool. Um, Now kind of just moving ahead here. You post a lot about food. You post a lot of food pics. I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you about that. How did you get started with food? Well, naturally, musicians, anytime there's free food, we're pretty much there. But how did you get involved with cooking? How did that start for you?
I got bored. I think that was it. It so when the pandemic first hit, um, that's kind of when everything really started as far as me actively cooking a lot more. Um, when I was in undergrad, I was decent as far as health wise, and after getting into my artist certificate, I moved out and I was doing a lot better. But I was constantly working. I was always out of the house. I didn't really do much, and now when I had the opportunity, I was like, all right. When I did have the chance, I love to cook. What can I do? So I started just taking every single recipe I could and like, all right, this is what I have. This sounds good. Let's try it. And just started making things. And some things come out bad and sometimes they turn out really good. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's mostly to keep my hands busy, I think, because every recipe kind of felt like an instrument to me at that point. It was like, all right, quality control, go through all the ingredients, make sure everything's here, put it all together. At the end, meal, instrument. I'm still working. It gave me something to do. It gave me something to work towards, and at the end, you get to eat it. So
Yeah,
can't
that's a
be
great
anything wrong
analogy.
with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, it, where did you draw inspiration? Like what type of recipes, or how does a recipe interest you? Where did you find interest in what kind of recipes? That's a hard. I'm losing it.
Yeah.
What type of recipes you wanted to tackle?
Um, at first, it was I'm just going to try anything.
Okay.
I learned quickly that's a dumb idea because there's just some things that if you don't have the right tools, you just cannot do. And um, I the I started this when I was in the master's program. The Food Network has a recipe of the day,
Okay.
and they just email you into your inbox a recipe, and you get to view it. You can see, what's the recipe for today? Actually, what is the recipe for today? Did I save it? Roasted garlic clove chicken. Um, the reason I remember that is because it is something that I printed years ago and I have been making for years. It is amazing. It is you take chicken thighs, you fry them in a cast iron pan with oil and garlic, you flip them, you throw it in the oven, and you walk away for 20 minutes. And that's it. And they come out, they're perfectly juicy. You've got 20 cloves of roasted garlic to just enjoy. And oh, I'm actually making it tomorrow for
Oh, very
Hanukkah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta use the frying oil for Hanukkah. So that was the start into actively gathering recipes. Um, Probably the show that I remember actively getting interested in cooking was Iron Chef, the original Iron Chef. I am a huge Morimoto fan.
Okay.
Huge
Yeah.
Morimoto fan. Um, that and Molly Ye.
Okay.
She's an active chef on Food Network now, and some of her recipes are absolutely amazing. And I think I've made probably 5 or 6 in the past week, and every single one has been an outstanding meal.
What's your favorite thing to cook, or do you have a set list of things that you like cooking?
I love grilling.
Okay.
Steak is always my favorite thing to cook and eat.
Can't go wrong with a steak. Oh.
No, you can't. Um, and for as much work as it is, I love risotto. I love making risotto. I probably actually enjoy making it as much as I do eating it.
Okay.
as difficult as it is just because you're constantly stirring for about 30 minutes.
Hmm.
But outside of that, when it's done right, it tastes so rich and so good. And watching somebody eat risotto is amazing because it's just the amount of flavor that's in each bite is incredible.
All right. Do you ever pick up recipes from like YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
That's exactly where I was going with this. The recipe I have for my risotto is from a guy. Um, he's not uh, clean as far as his language. He's very vulgar, and that's just kind of my humor as well. But it's
Sure.
a channel called Nat's What I Reckon,
Okay.
and he's got this. He had a video series that he started at the beginning of the pandemic, and he's in Australia, I believe, and it's F jar sauce. And he went about going to like into a market, and he would look at like, this is a bechamel sauce. No, it's not. And he would explain everything that's wrong with it, and actually show you how to make a proper sauce instead of out of a jar. He's got a, and he did that. There's a packaged mushroom risotto that he found in a store, and he said, he reads the back, goes, add a third cup of water and stick in the microwave. No. And he lit it on fire and then hit it with a knife, and then shows you exactly how to make homemade risotto. And I tried it, and it blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever seen Cooking with Babish?
Not a lot of it.
Okay.
I've seen a little bit. Um, one of my fun ones, Something's Burning with Bert Kreischer, is
Okay.
always fun, because it's just comedians trying to keep it together while they're cooking, and sometimes they completely undercook stuff, and it is hysterical. That's a great one to watch. I'll have to look into that Babish one.
Yeah. Yeah. The one, his shtick is he'll take recipes or foods that are mentioned in a movie or in a TV show, and then he recreates them. So
Oh,
like, yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
like he'll do the Krabby Patty from SpongeBob, and he'll like,
yeah,
oh, this is what I think is how they make it, or from just different movies, and he'll
yeah,
make it. So I find that that's kind of cool. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you're really into burgers, there's George Motz has a burger series
Yes.
that he's going around all the regional style burgers, and he's showing you how to cook them and all that. Those are really fun to watch because he's a wacky guy.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I started watching that because one of the Cooking with Babish videos took you to that. So he was with a buddy of his, and they said, "We're going to go watch this guy." His name escaped me, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And he talks about all these, all the different types of burgers and how they
Yeah,
came about, like a slug burger because
yeah,
I think it was like 10 cents because that's what they called it. They called it a slug, and
yeah.
a Lucy burger, and it's just like a smash burger. No, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah,
Yeah, I watched some of that, and it's just fun.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I started becoming a foodie as well, so I said we have to talk a little bit about foods,
yeah.
um, and whatnot. Now, kind of going into towards the tail end of our time together, a few more questions for you. Um, being, what does a typical practice session look like? In your peak, what were you doing? I know now it's a little bit different
Yeah.
because we're, our situation, but when everything was kind of normal, what were you doing?
That was my routine to an extent. Um, I had a warm up that I did every single day. There was a specific warm up I did every Monday, and it was I could do this one warm up, and I would be so warmed up I would actually really only need to do like a long tone and one lip slur, and I would be completely warmed up every day. So I would do that, lip slurs, and I've got so many different books and exercises of lip slurs, and I try not to do the same exact ones every single day because it just, you get stuck in doing the same thing. You're not branching out. You're not growing too much. Um, with that, in respect, like once I get a lips are strong enough, I'm not going to constantly come back to it. I will move on. Um, I mean, finger flexibilities, I quickly learned to realize that just actively use trumpet fingerings and use the Clark book. Just do it. It's great. There's nothing that's good. You ever heard Clark 3 done on a tuba? It's pretty
No.
crazy. It's nuts. It's something I've been working on some of these, just trying to see how fast can I get. And at a certain point, it just sounds like mud because it's tuba and you're in that range. But it's great to be able to get to that point, because at some point you will have to be heard cleanly through chaos in a certain extent. Always pressing range, actively using articulations, double tonguing. If you ever have to work on double tonguing, put it in your long tones too. Actively start ga ga instead of da ga 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 ga. So you're only working on that hard to hit articulation, and then you don't actually have to spend time. All right, now digga 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 da digga 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 da digga 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 da. If you're actively doing it everywhere, you're always working on it.
Right, and that's good advice too, because
Yeah.
that g or the k syllable for a trumpet player sometimes that's the harder syllable, right? Because that's where the tongue is doing something a little bit different from what it's normally doing when you're going ta ta ta.
Yeah. And then scales, always do scales. Once you learn them, you'll be so glad that you learned them. I was resistant to them for a very long time, and still not the best at scales, and I still actively practice scales. Every time I practice, I'm always practicing scales. Anytime I play test an instrument at Eastman, I'm playing scales. And then sight read as much as you can. I try to sight read out of, when I was at peak, I was sight reading at least one etude out of 5 different books that were not books that I was actively studying out of with John. So I was essentially doing about 7 to 8 etude books a day as far as one etude, and then still working on recital stuff and orchestral excerpts and any concert music or literature that I had to learn as well. Um, I practiced a lot, hours a day, but constantly broken up. Um, as much time on face as off face. Anything, if you play ridiculously high, go down, and vice versa. That's the only way it grows. You have to realize these are muscles, they're very small, they can get injured really, really easily, and it sucks. So
Yeah, yeah,
just
and sometimes it's going to be
constantly
permanent.
recover. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Constantly recover. Drink a ton of water. And if it's not feeling good, just stop. Yeah. Don't play through pain. There's no reason to play through pain. The tuba will be there the next day.
Yeah, that's good. What's one of the best pieces of advices you received?
I've I've thought about this for a long time, and it happened in a music class, but it's not necessarily about music, but it is exactly about music. Hold what can be held. And that was brought up in my very first theory class, when we're looking at, okay, we're changing from one chord to the next. The first thing you should do is what? And everybody's like, all right, we got to make sure that it's the major third because it's the no, no, no. Go with the easiest ones. What are the notes that we're looking at? What are the notes we have to get to? How many of those are the same? Keep them the same. Hold what can be held and only adjust what needs to be. Adjust to what's around. And what I've turned that into, hold what can be held as a tuba player. It's the bass line. That's me. I hold. I'm here to support. I'm the lowest guy down here holding everything up. And that's what I'm going to do. And that also goes into everything else that I do. If especially in this time, I know I don't want to get too preachy about this, but my only aspect of it was, I don't have much control over what's going on, but what I can control, I'm going to control. I'm I understand that some people aren't taking it as strongly as I am, and it's even within my own family, and that's rough. And I have to actively say, like, I love you guys, I really do, but I don't want to potentially have been the one to bring something. And if I found out that I did, I would never be able to live with myself. And that goes back to that hold what can be held. I'm going to hold myself back so I can hold you in the future. That's my goal behind this. But okay, you get out of this modeling thing. So, fun story for you. And this goes to I don't have a lot of rituals except for one. And this started with the Ducks. Um, the group I play in, the Bear Brass Band, we we got this crazy idea that we should record the sound, the music that the Ducks play when they score a goal, and we were going to record ourselves playing it in the living room of our friend's house, going completely nuts, wearing a bunch of Ducks gear during the playoffs one year, just because we're a band trying to
Why
start up.
not?
We need and why not?
Well,
Because
why not? Yeah.
half of us are gigantic hockey fans, and we post it. And I remember waking up the next morning, going into work, and the band leader is the guy who hired me at Eastman, and he walks into the shop and says, "So the Ducks just called me, and we're going to be playing at the games now." Out of nowhere. And it was like, what? So yeah, they asked if we would come and walk around the stadium before the game, and then during the game walk around the halls and rile people up and keep. And it was like,
Keep the energy going.
yes. And I thought, like, you'd think at the end of a hockey game, you've got an arena full of people and you're literally standing on an ice rink with a sousaphone on. I was not scared at all. I wasn't even afraid of falling. It was like I was hockey is just my thing, but like I felt comfortable standing on ice wearing a sousaphone. It was the weirdest experience of my life. And it was just I'm always gonna remember that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and then it's funnier because you know it's out of the blue. You're just you're an avid fan. I don't know about maybe you weren't expecting. Oh yeah, they're gonna bring us on, but it's outrageous. It gets enough attention where it's like, hey, you guys can you guys we want you guys here to help
Yeah.
pump up the crowd. That's just great. Yeah.
So my ritual there is I challenge the foghorn. And I've learned what pitch it's at, and
Okay.
I actively blast it as loudly as I can through the halls at random times, and people have honestly run down the aisle expecting that, oh, we scored, wait, what? And you just
Oh.
completely scare people because they, what did I miss? Oh god. And it's I don't know if you ever had a chance to go to a hockey game or heard one of those foghorns go off when you're inside of one of those arenas. The sound is just so large and so filling. And it's like, oh, that's the most ideal tuba tone ever. So I actively like, all right, you play, I play. All right, game on, let's go. So
Yeah.
that one I when I challenge it, it gets me hyped up, ready to go. And man, those games are just so much fun.
That's great. That's great. Um, how many tubas do you own?
Oh god. Too many? Um, tubas, three.
Okay.
I own three tubas. I have two C tubas and an F. Four tubas. One of I have a B flat, but that's with one of my students. Um, I have a Canstel Grand C, which is also with one of my students, because I'm fixing his tuba. I've got my Eastman prototype C, which is the 836 second prototype that they ever made, and I cannot get enough of this one. I prefer it over the production models, but that's just me. I have a Miraphone F tuba. It's a Petrushka model, so it's piston based and one rotor. And that's just me. I'm not very good at rotor F. It's a hard thing to learn, and it's just one of those. It's got a weird note. Every single one's got a weird note. It's a low C, and you have to know how to play it. Something I'm learning, but not buying a tuba for that. I've got a Chimbasso back there. I've got a bass trombone. I've got two sousaphones. I've got an Eastman one that I use the brass band all the time, and I have a King H&N White from 1939, I believe, and it's an E flat. It's satin silver with a gold wash bell, and it's got one of the greatest sounds I've ever heard out of a sousaphone, to be completely honest. But it doesn't have the original lead pipes. I'm still trying to fix that. But I still have a couple of trumpets. I have euphonium, probably didgeridoo or two.
You must be a musician, yeah.
Yeah, instruments everywhere in here. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, that's great. And then, final question for you: what are some of your plans for New Year's? What are your New Year's resolutions, or something that you're looking forward to in the new year?
I'm just looking forward to playing again with other people. I'm so tired of just playing with myself. I mean, the opportunities are starting to show up, and the thing I'm looking forward to is that first one that's going to be like, all right, it's more of a yes than it is any hesitation. We're definitely doing this, and I'm looking forward to that again. Right. I'm looking forward to the first time I can say no. I'm too busy. I can't do that. I haven't had that opportunity in a while. I haven't had that privilege. Not an opportunity, it's a privilege when somebody comes to you and asks you to do something and you just don't have the time. And I miss being out. I miss creating music, and that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to next year. Because I know it's not going to get worse. This can't, to me, this isn't, we've gotten through most of it. We have to be going up. I refuse to think that we are going to go down from here.
Okay.
I refuse to accept that we would go down from here. I think we have it within ourselves to go up, and we should. So.
Yeah, great. Hey, well, Branden, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. It's my interview with Branden Herron. And you can find Branden on social media, on Instagram at you can find him on social media. You can find him on social media at BLH1590.
That is correct.
Right, great. Thank you, Branden. It's at the end of the show, and I'm already losing words.
So Branden, thank you. My absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Hope to have you again. Stay in touch, friend.
You as well. Take care.
Right.